I agree with you. We talked about this topic a little bit yesterday. And the first name that came to mind, actually, I agree with you on Spillane. I think he's the one for multiple reasons. But one of the names that came to mind, and this is more just for himself. I don't know if it's necessarily for the team, but Alex Highsmith.
Absolutely, man.
I feel like he's really got to come in and make a good first impression, because if you're saying it's legit going to be an open competition, we know who Melvin Ingram is.
Exactly.
So if Melvin Ingram comes in and balls out, and in these first couple weeks of camp, it's just like, hey, we're going to roll with Melvin Ingram. And then all of a sudden preseason comes around. It's not like we have to see Melvin Ingram in preseason. Like,
you know who
the
Melvin
starter
is.
spot could be locked up within the first couple weeks of training camp. So
Absolutely.
I think Alex Highsmith, for his sake, not necessarily the Steelers' sake, because now all of a sudden that outside linebacker position is...
It's a strength now, man.
Yeah, it's a little bit more of a strength having Melvin Ingram. But for his sake, I do think he's got to show up big early on in training camp.
No, I love the fact that you brought Alex up, man. Like you said, we talked about him, man. I do think that it's a legitimate open competition. The $4 million says a lot. That's the money always tells the story in these type of conversations here, man. The $4 million, they want him to have an opportunity. It's legit. And Alex, like I said, if 2020 Melvin shows up, Alex can do that. I 100% believe he'll beat that out. 2019 shows up, that's dicey, but it's a good conversation. It's good that it's going to be like that. But 100%, Alex cannot afford a slow start in training camp. He can't afford bad practices, which I don't think he'll have at all. I mean, knowing Alex, seeing how he works, being able to see him doing the mini camp process, the dude is ready. He's grinding. He's preparing like he's supposed to. And that's the part where I'm like, I know what this is looking like right now. We know what Melvin looks like when it's healthy. We just got to see which one it shows up, and we're going to find that out in the next couple of days as well. But Alex, man, if Alex starts out hot,
at least it makes it more fun.
Absolutely.
Rest of the preseason. Now it's a competition. Now Ingram's probably playing preseason.
Exactly. If Alex isn't balling out the way he needs to ball out in training camp, then for a fact, Melvin doesn't have to be out there in training camp, because we know who he is. We're going to hit you with it. Just be healthy, get in game shape. You're getting airmailed to week 1. Cool. But if Alex is legit balling out and it's a legit competition, Melvin's not going to be able to just be a practice all-star. He's going to have to actually show up in the games. And that's the part that's going to really make it beneficial for Alex and just us as a whole, because we're going to be able to see him and have a lot more fun with that. But that is ultimately how that thing could play out, man.
Yeah, and the reason I thought of him too, obviously now Spillane with Vince Williams retiring, he's in the mix, but offensive line, any other position that we have, I feel like we're begging dudes, or we already have everything set up. Like, we want Zach Banner to be the starter, even though we just brought in this dude. It's like, dude, you're going to have every opportunity. Even if you don't have the best first impression, odds are you're still going to be starting. Correct. Because who else? Same with Trey Turner. Now we announced Kendrick Green. It seems like we're leaning that way. Dotson and even left tackle Chooks. Like, we want all those dudes to be starting for us. Like, so if they don't have the best camp right off the bat, that's not going to, I think, necessarily kill them, because who else do we have?
Right.
And then same thing at cornerback, I guess. Cam Sutton, seems like we got him locked in at cornerback too. But
even though it was funny, man, I was watching I think it was ESP. No, it was NFL Live, and they were doing our projected starters. They definitely had Justin Lane as the projected starter opposite Joe Hayden. Yes, I was like, whoa, I wasn't ready. Yeah,
I don't agree with that. But now
I was like, whoa.
We're talking about Antoine Brooks at the nickelback. I feel like we want those. It's not like this open competition.
Right.
I can't say that completely, because no, I can. Here's why. Because at the nickel spot, Antoine Brooks fits that mold. Whereas like with James Pierre and Justin Lane, they're more outside.
Correct.
So we're pushing more for Brooks in that nickel spot, because who else do we have, really?
I mean, outside of Trey, yeah.
So that's why I think Alex Highsmith, for his sake, he's really got to step up, because that's probably the most pure open competition that we have.
No, man, you bring up a good point. That's what
I'm thinking.
The most
outside.
Pure,
I mean, Spillane, for his sake, because we don't want to bring in another middle linebacker. But for the people that we have right now, I think that's the most pure open competition.
I think that is, and I would also say left tackle. I think Chooks and Dan Moore, they're gonna get the legit dance for that. Absolutely. I mean, why not? Chooks is on a rookie deal still. We haven't given him any significant money. And then with Dan, he was the first 4th round pick. So you're right at the final midpoint. We look at 3rd round, 2nd round, 1st round are all early picks. 4th is like that legit middle point of the draft. And then from there, 5, 6, and 7, you're a late round guy. We don't expect anything from you. So as a 4th rounder, he's going to get a legitimate chance, but it's with the expectations that Chooks will beat him out. And that should happen. Chooks should win. But he's going to get an opportunity, though. That's all we're saying. Similar to Buddy. Buddy's going to get an opportunity to get some reps in there to see if he can win it. But we're all expecting from organization, the organization expects Spillane, Devin Bush to be the clear-cut best guys in there. That's just how they look at those slots from the drafts and stuff like that. So for me, man, yeah.
For the team, it's got to be Spillane.
Yeah.
We need that. And anyone on the offensive line, but we've said this for how long?
Yeah, it has to be.
Now it's Spillane's big time because this is going to determine whether we need to bring in an extra middle linebacker. That changes everything.
That changes a ton, man.
And all of a sudden, something we thought had a little bit more depth than what others were thinking on the surface is not the best depth. Yeah. It is, but it's a lot of uncertainty with it, correct. Especially injuries. And like with Gilbert and Allen, there's some question marks too.
Very true. Very true, man. So that's whew. But let us know in the chat, man. Who do y'all think needs to have a great first impression in this training camp, man? Needs to start fast so that way, we can make the right moves going forward. But before we get to the rest of the comments, I did see that Sean Manahan, shout out to you, man. He asked, Moats, why you don't come coach linebackers for us? Or why don't I come coach linebackers for us, for the Steelers? Honestly, man, the biggest thing is this. I just don't want to. I don't want to commit that time away from my family. That was one of the bigger reasons why I retired. As a player, you spend a ton of time on the grind, preparing mentally, physically, just getting everything in order so you could be your best self. And you miss a ton of stuff. You miss a ton of birthdays, first day of school, sporting events, recitals. You miss a ton of that type of stuff. And for me, I was getting tired. I was getting sick of it, man. I just didn't feel, even though I was still very present, for me, it wasn't to the extent that I wanted it to be. And as a coach, it's only going to be a lot worse because those guys spend even more time. So that's the biggest reason why I'm not doing any type of coaching on that. Like I might coach like my daughter's teams, but I'm not going to coach anything collegially or professional, especially while they're that age, man. When they get older, that might be different. But for now, we're going to take all of that knowledge, all of that film work, and we're going to put it into this show and in all these other shows that we doing. And that's how we going to rock. All right. So don't worry about the team getting coached. Y'all getting coached. So we good. I got y'all.
So you can have better takes whenever you're arguing with your friends, huh?
They going to be like, nah. Most told me it's a difference because of this right here. And this is what he looked and he said, if it's 3-by-1 and it's a 1st and 10, you cheat to the 3-by-1 side because they can't block this guy on the backside. Y'all are going to know that. Not a lot of people know that. That's coach talk for you, though.
We got Sean Ferguson.
All right, what you got
talking
for me,
about
man?
Vince? Did Vince have an injury or was it just time to hang him up? That was one of your scenarios, the injury.
I personally don't think he had an injury. The reason I'm saying that is because I saw him at minicamp. I saw him participate. He looked good. I told you, even when I came out, I was like, yo, don't count Vince out. Vince is ready to go. Vince is a dog. And I'm watching. I'm like, yo, he looks good. He's ready. He's good. He's going to be fine. So I just think it was more so just him just saying, man, you know what? I'm ready to leave on my own terms. I don't think it was an injury. I don't think it was him feeling like he couldn't perform at a high level anymore.
Someone's saying Haskins.
Haskins
for him, yes. If we're talking about the Steelers, it's not the end of the world, but
he definitely needs it.
Yeah, definitely. I think for Steelers, I'm saying Spillane.
Yeah, because if it's Haskins really just needs to prove enough to the organization that you should at least keep me on practice squad.
Yeah,
because we know they're not starting Mason, Haskins, Dobbs. They're not starting anybody but Ben at quarterback, right? Barring something catastrophic. So we're not looking at Haskins as a starter. We're looking at him as, is he a guy that is worth investing in to let him develop, to let him buy into this culture? And then when Ben steps away, now give him that legitimate opportunity. That's what we're looking at with Haskins. So I think, man, for him, first impression, showing just the maturity, just can you stick? Can you continue to be a sponge and learn? When you're in training camp, when we give you these new calls, because in training camp, the way that the learning progress works is you come in during mini camp, OTAs and mini camp, and we're going to give you the full playbook and we're going to go through the install, right? That's your first time seeing it. So you expect to have a lot of mistakes. You expect to have guys, messing up calls and verbiage and stuff, especially quarterbacks, right? Because it's extra on them. But once you progress through it, you're like, all right, at the beginning of OTAs, the mistakes that you made, you shouldn't be making at the end of mini camp. All right. Now you get to training camp and now we're going to reset. We're going to give you that same install, but we're going to start it all over. So not only have I given you the install in OTAs, not only did we do another reset of the install for the mini camp portion, but now we're going to do another reset, new install in training camp. So for Haskins, him starting fast shows that not only have I been paying attention at these parts, but I've also learned from my mistakes that I made in those parts and I've corrected them. If he's doing those things, then now the team is going to look and say, all right, he's at least worth being on a practice squad, because Haskins, he'll be able to stash on a practice squad. I promise, like, he can do that. Just because of the controversy about how mature he is and things like that, you can stash him on your practice squad this year, but he's not going to be worth that practice squad spot if you don't feel he gives you a legitimate chance to be a quarterback down the line. I don't think you hold him if it's not going to be that.
Ooh, so you're thinking Haskins practice squad, Dobbs 3. So Dobbs could be helping out Ben in the actual games.
Or even if they don't do that and they just dress 2, because we know the team will dress just 2. Mason be that second guy. You know, I can see it as that scenario also. I just feel like with Haskins, he does have that luxury of being able to be on the practice squad. Like, I do think that they would stash him there and he could just grow and develop without it necessarily having to feel the full weight of being on the active roster. Whereas with Dobbs, I just don't think, if Haskins is who we think he is, I don't think that the team would put Dobbs back there, because it's like, well, what is Dobbs developing into? Because you're not viewing Dobbs as the development into the franchise quarterback, because you already have Haskins supposedly in that role and you have Mason in that role. So that's the part where you can see it, you know, kind of phasing him out. And I don't think that Mason is going to be in that conversation, because Mason he's proven that he can at least play in the NFL, and he's done enough to make it interesting for him. Whereas with Dobbs, he hasn't had that sample size just yet to even, you know, make yourself say that, all right, we'll save a spot for him right here. Like, I just don't see that. Now, he could surprise a lot of people with his growth, and obviously we know what he brings in a Matt Canada style offense, so that makes him a kind of like a one-off, right? Because
the whole slash thing,
right? It makes him a one-off, and that's why I just think, like, they might look at him as, instead of viewing him as strictly a quarterback, what if they're just viewing him as like a utility guy, kind of like a Ray McLeod? Just don't have him as a returner, but he's your utility offensive guy. All right, we know he can catch, we know he can throw, we know he's fast enough, he can run the zone read. We've seen these things. How, like, maybe Canada's saying we're going to feature him in some role like that, then we can see him out there. But I just don't think, in terms of the pure quarterback race, that he's going to be able to leapfrog one of those guys right now.
How big do you think his relationship with Ben would impact that? Because how we're talking, it seems like it's on Haskins than whether Dobbs makes the roster or not. Because if Haskins balls out, we'll just keep Haskins. We don't have to worry about Dobbs. But if Dobbs' relationship with Ben's that important, and then we're talking about him as a utility guy, maybe that makes him a little bit more valuable.
Man, yeah. He brings a ton, but Dobbs is one of those players right now that you can see him good at certain things, but not great at anything. We think he's a good passer. He can throw the ball well enough, but he's not a great passer, right? We broke that down with just watching the tape on him. He's fast, but he's not the fastest. He's shifty, but not the shiftiest, right? He's good at a ton of stuff, but not great at anything. And that's the part that is just kind of like that piece of the puzzle. Like, where does he fit?
Dude, what do you think of that Ben relationship then, though?
I do like that, but I don't think it's as significant, just because if this is a guy that had played a ton, kind of like the Charlie Batch scenario, right? Where he had already been a starter for, you know, multiple years and has already seen all this stuff, and you can really
started for us, right, and got some wins.
Like, it's a different level of comfort and a different level of value that you place on that. Whereas right now, I'm still questioning. I mean, Dobbs knows a ton of ball, but has he seen so much ball where he's really able to help Ben to that level? Like, I think that Dobbs can be on the sideline.
You think it might be blown up a little bit?
Right. Because I feel like Dobbs can sit on the sideline and Ben could go through a play and he says, yo, what coverage was that? And Dobbs says, yo, what's cover 3? Sure, he could do that. But I also think that Haskins could do that. I think that if you talk to Mason, Mason could do that. So that's the part where I'm just like, with Charlie could tell him, like, yo, Ben, he was like, yo, Ben, this is the coverage they're going to do. I've seen guys do this where they're going to flash here and they're going to build over here. I'm letting you know this is how it's going to happen. Hit this guy coming on the backside. He talked about that on the podcast with us. And you could see it's like, oh, that makes sense. And he's like, oh yeah, that's what he's doing right there. And Ben and both of those guys would talk about it, and that's why it was such a big deal. With Dobbs, though, I don't think that Dobbs is going to be able to do that. And if he can't, then it's just like, I don't think that it holds the same level of significance.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that was always my thing with Dobbs. Like, that could be one of the main ingredients for keeping him. And then you talk about the utility piece.
Yeah.
But, it'll be interesting if he's even used that way in preseason.
Well, because this is the interesting part. So Darren Dalton says Dobbs is good for subbing out Big Ben for some of those QB option plays. Now, we did see when Matt Kemp... No, because think about it, right? Week 17.
I remember.
That's what they were doing. And who was the quote-unquote coordinator for that game?
No, I get that.
Yeah.
I'm for whatever works. I just think you have better odds with Ben out there. That's always my thing. But if it works, whatever. Like I don't want to be the party pooper.
That's what they're referring to with that. So I can see that. I just don't know how big of a role that is, though. Are we talking 5 plays, 7 plays? Like, I don't think that Dobbs, because like
he needs to be an asset as a receiver, right, then. But so it's not so obvious.
But they've shown clips. I've had a couple people actually send me clips of Dobbs catching touchdown passes at Tennessee. The thing is this. The impact has to be worth it. Like, you think about when Taysom Hill comes out there with New Orleans, back when Drew Brees was Drew. If you're going to take the ball out of Drew Brees' hands, it better be electric. It better be well worth it. And we talked about, at least with Taysom, you see the productivity that is associated with him, whether he's blocking, whether he's running the ball, throwing the ball, or catching the ball. It's typically something explosive happening in a big way. We just haven't seen that with Dobbs just yet. Not saying that he's not capable of it, but we haven't seen that just yet. So I'm not big on taking it out of Ben's hand to just put Dobbs out there for the sake of running a trick play. If it's significant and if we actually producing and Dobbs shows that he can do more of it, okay, cool. But I don't want to just do that just for the sake of doing it. Yeah, that's my thing. Yeah,
man. We're kind of on the same page with that one then. But we'll see what happens in the preseason. That's why, I mean, we have so many different layers to this preseason. All of a sudden, Highsmith, Ingram competition. What's Dobbs going to do? Haskins, Mason. There's a lot of things we're going to be looking out for.
Now, it's
running back too.
It's a legit conversation.